So you've explored guided leveled text and you've explored decodable text. You've read some articles about them. You've had some time to reflect on your thoughts, what might be the pros, the cons. You've read other people's takes and perspectives on those two type of text, what they feel like are the pros and the cons. And now I just kind of want to review that, pull it all together, and talk about some other text types and how they can be used in your classroom. So starting with leveled text, since that's what we started with, leveled text and decodable text, you can see a lot of these books are books that you could actually go into a Barnes& and Noble and you could purchase. And they have been looked over for their text complexities from vocabulary and structure and content, and to determine what level they would classify as in one of those gradients from A to Z. For instance, Fontes and Pinnell has that text gradient from A to Z, and some of these would fall on that gradient somewhere. To be fair, in the beginning of like level A, B, and C, they're very, very simple. That would not be something that you would go into a Barnes & Noble and just pull off the shelf and want to read to your child for enjoyment. That would not be the purpose of them. Bill Martin, Eric Carle are famous for their predictable text, and a lot of those have been used in classrooms as shared readings and as writing stems for young children. But that's not traditionally what we think of when we think of for leveled text. So the idea for leveled text, I know you've read, is to increase the complexity of reading skills. And again, it's a quick start. So we introduce some heart words, we use some pictures, where beginning letter sounds that students can look at the picture and look at the beginning letter sound and make some inferences as to what that word might be. And boom, they're off, taking off and reading. The nice thing about leveled text, as the complexity increases, you have more meaningful text, deeper vocabulary, more opportunities to teach those comprehension and critical literacy skills. Many different genres are available in leveled text. We can look at narrative, fiction, we can look at nonfiction, prose, fables, poetry, and we can have access to all kinds of genres and text structures inside of leveled text for guided reading. However, and I'm finding this to be very true now that we've switched to science of reading, when I do an assessment with an assessment that's aligned with leveled text, it's really difficult for my little readers to be able to even get off the ground because we're not training them to use that cueing system. Instead, they're trying to decode words with phonics skills they don't have yet. And so that is a difficulty right now with leveled text that's coming up since we're switching from using guided readers to teach reading to the science of reading and using phonics to teach reading and decoding those words, sounding those words out. So you'll find that students are guessing at words. Going back to having the pictures in context and helping them figure out how, what word that might be, students start leaning on pictures. And when pictures start disappearing from the books and they haven't really leaned on sounding out words through phonics, then we're really doing a lot of word guessing. And so that can be part of the problem with the leveled text for guided reading. But as students gain more of their phonics skills, leveled reading has great benefits too. So back to the original genre, text structure, background knowledge, and vocabulary. So think about that as we proceed. Decodable texts have been around for a long time. I remember the Bob books with my daughter when she was young. They really focus on word families, on sounding out and blending, and it's very controlled. And the words that are in there, the very few words that are not decodable letter by letter, would be some heart words that you would have taught and activities with and practiced. And this would be a couple of examples of decodable text. There's some great resources in the RMC digitally. Flyleaf is a collection that is available free online. Beyond Decodables is another wonderful free resource that offers you a digital version of Decodables that you can download and print if you want to. More and more, a lot of our school curriculum sets are offering Decodables. So once your children have a few consonant sounds and vowel sounds, we can take that motivation and teach them to blend those sounds, and they're reading books and they're actually decoding words. And so that is why decodable texts are so powerful, especially since we're using science of reading so much in our schools for our students, because they're reading. And it's a gradual progression as we gain phonics skills and teach those phonics skills. Our students will go up in the books will go up in complexity, and our students, this is a great practice of scaffolding and gradual release, really. I mean, they're getting that support and pushed on and having successes with just a little bit of guidance here. And so as long as we're giving them that strong phonics support, decodable text work well. However, it's very shallow in meaning, very shallow in vocabulary, fairly difficult to really teach meaningful comprehension skills through this. Students who are always thinking and thinking ahead and thinking about what makes sense sometimes will run into a collection of words that they're trying to force it to make sense. So they end up doing some guessing, just like they would in the leveled readers. So it's something to be prepared for, and to make sure that you guide them back and say, what do you see? What are the sounds? Let's model that, that tap and map it out kind of process as you're going through those decodable readers. Predictable text sometimes can look like a leveled or put into the leveled genre text, but these are great books to sit and enjoy with your children. I would use them a lot in class as a shared reading, as a springboard for writing. This is a Eric Carle and a Bill Martin piece of text, very popular. So they're fun. We've adapted them even at the fourth grade level for writing. It does have some meaning in it. Has the opportunity to practice that fluency, that rhythm, that prosody, because a lot of them do have that rhythm. It's very poetic in sound. I know that because it's predictable, you can do a lot of center activities with them after you've done some shared reading and gone through and highlighted some of those words. I love the idea of cutting the sentences apart and scrambling them to put them back together to emphasize that word building and sequence. But again, kids who are great memorizers can appear to be reading the book when in reality they've just memorized the pattern and using the pictures to help them know what's coming up next, what page, what they're reading at the moment. And so it can create some poor habits if we overly emphasize predictable text. And as with all things, I think that we have to make sure that we have a variety of text. And I'm hoping that you're seeing that we need to make sure our students have opportunities to practice their phonics skills and decodables, and to have exposure to things that they can read independently on their own, like the predictable text, and also be exposed to other texts where we can build meaning and activities that build on those comprehension and critical literacy skills. Love wordless picture books. Children can read right from the start independently, but it's not such a simple task as giving a child a book and say, read this book to me. You need to model that. I would start with sharing some wordless picture books with my children, teaching them how to pay attention to details in the pictures and thinking about character and setting and what's happening. What are those characters doing? Where is that taking place? What's happening next? This is a great way to start some storytelling in your classroom, to start building those comprehension skills, those like setting, character, and plot. A great way to build critical literacy, like inferencing, drawing conclusions, making predictions based on the clues that are in the text. And again, I love the accessibility. If you teach these skills, even if you have a child who has trouble decoding, this is accessible by all children. So I would definitely model that with lots of different wordless picture books. I would do that in small group, whole group, give them guide them through it, just like you would guide them through a level text, guide them through telling a story using wordless picture books. Older students sometimes seem to resist, but there are some great wordless picture books out there for older students that have such complex themes and ideas that they're not made for younger students. And my older students that I had in small group reading, and we would focus on wordless picture books, they would say, this is harder than reading books with text. So I kind of love that. That was a challenge for them. But just the idea of looking at those deeper themes. And with the older kids, they really used color and for tone and mood. And that's another great thing that you can do with wordless picture books, is to teach some of those other critical literacy skills besides inferencing and drawing conclusions and making predictions. Using wordless picture books for interactive writing, or even writing stems. Chris Van Allsburg has a great book that I used in fourth grade for my students, and it would have a title, a caption, and a very elaborate picture with strange and wonderful things happening. I'll reference that at the end. So right now, the book has escaped my memory. Anyway, my kids would write incredible fantasy stories using these picture books, and we had a great time with that. Graphic novels. They're not as easy as you think they are. I have parents who are like so embarrassed that their child loves graphic novels and feels like they're cheating. And I'm like, they absolutely are not. And I feel like for some students, that gives them that scaffold, that support that they need. They have those pictures, by the way. Pictures are not great supports unless we teach our kids how to use those pictures. I was walking in a classroom that was enjoying deer time, and a kid hurriedly ran through a Ted Arnold book about a fly, and it was supposed to be hilarious, and the kid was done in 2 minutes. And I said, how'd you like the book? He's like, it was dumb. And I'm like, well, tell me about it. And he kind of like regurgitated, but he didn't enjoy the pictures. And the idea of Ted Arnold books are the pictures. They support the story. They carry the story, actually. And so we sat down and we reread it, and I modeled for him. And then he took over and was like, oh, that was actually funny. Absolutely. So we have to teach our kids how to read graphic novels so they get the most out of them. And there's absolutely nothing wrong, like I said, with graphic novels. Offers lots of opportunities to scaffold some reading. But a lot of our kids find it very engaging, so they'll pick it up willingly. We don't have to coerce them. So it's a great choice for independent reading if that's what they choose to read. So we're not only telling a story through words, but pictures, but also dialogue and onomatopoeias. And kids have to understand those text structures and how those work and how the author is using them to portray a story. And so I love this idea of that visual thinking strategy. What's happening this ties right in with the wordless picture books. What's happening in this picture? Why do you say that? What else? Talking about that dialogue bubble. And this is a great leap and scaffold into teaching kids quotation marks in dialogue and speech bubbles in dialogue. And that dialogue is what the characters are saying. And how are they saying that? This is a great reader's theater opportunity as well. And again, there's a great debate out there whether graphic novels are a cheat, over relying on pictures. But actually, you need to be careful because sometimes they can be over complex for your students. So make sure you help them make good choices and know how to access the text. Trade books. These are the ones that I love. I go into Barnes and Noble and I have a whole collection. And it's terrible. Book fair comes and I don't even have a classroom of my own anymore. And I'm just, or grandchildren to buy books for. And I'm like, I'm going to add to my stack. I'll be back to pay for it later. But these are great opportunities for you to read to your children, to share with your children. Lots of award-winning books with complex themes, ideas, opportunities to build comprehension, opportunities to connect to students' schemas, experiences, background knowledge, to build content knowledge, to build knowledge of other cultures. And it's authentic, it's interesting, it's engaging. This is what we need to help draw kids in. We want them to enjoy and love reading, and this is a great way to do it. It's also a great way to find out who your oral comprehenders are. When you're assessing kids and they're having a hard time decoding, but you realize they're the ones that are engaged in conversation, when you're doing a read aloud, they have the most text-driven questions that are deep and thoughtful and responses. And so trade books are an amazing resource to help children embrace the love of reading, whether they can decode or not. They can be used for interactive read alouds, which is beyond just read aloud. They can use them for as a mentor text for writing, as an example for how to create a hook, or how to do flashbacks, or how to use the literary devices, imagery. They can be done in shared reading, independent reading for dear time. So I love, after dear time, letting my kids do their book sell and have an opportunity to either sell the book to the whole class or to a partner, and why their book is so fantastic. Again, that's something that has to be modeled. And speaking of modeling, it's really important for you to help your kids find just right books. Nothing's more discouraging to sit with a child and they're so proud of the book that they checked out from the library. And what they're most proud of it is that it's thick, has a lot of words and no pictures. And you know that they can't even begin to decode anything and really enjoy the book. They like the idea of having that chapter book or that particular trade book. So make sure that you model for them how to pick an appropriate trade book for their independent reading time, and that they know how to access it and enjoy it. So trade books are lovely, wonderful, have so many great uses, and there's so many wonderful ones out there. I mean, isn't that why we all became teachers? No, I'm just kidding.